There you go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Securing Access and De-risking Sensitive Data for DBeaver Users, Enhancing Privacy, Security, and Compliance. My name is Noam Dror. I run solution engineering here at SecuPi. And in the last 3 decades, I've been helping enterprise customers protect their data, making sure they have the right controls to protect their sensitive data. And with me, I have Kyle. So Kyle, why don't you take a few minutes to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm a principal technical support engineer at DBeaver. I've been with them for a year, helping our customers. And prior to that, I've been about a 20-year DBA and technical support engineer in the MySQL and MariaDB world.
There you go. So we're going to have an interesting discussion today. And maybe where we should start is really about, why do we need something like a DBeaver? How do we manage data today? What are the kind of needs, Kyle, that you see in the marketplace today?
One of the biggest needs that we see often are the ability to connect to multiple databases on premise and in the cloud, and people wanting a unified interface instead of having to jump from one studio to another to accomplish your everyday tasks. They want an interface where they can look at their MySQL and their Postgres and Oracle all in the one same place with a nice familiar interface. That's where DBeaver has kind of stepped into this market to help with multiple database interfaces.
That's what I like about it. The nice thing about it, it's really aligned with what we do. We want to create one security platform for multiple data sources. So having a tool that can connect to multiple data sources helps us secure all those data sources. So that's really aligned. So that's really nice. So let's talk a little bit about data protection, privacy governance, right? So I think one of the main reasons to look at it is a lot of regulations and standards, right? Do you, as a working DBA, what do you see usually in the market in terms of security requirements or regulations or standards that you see with customers?
There's a lot of HIPAA for hospitals and health insurance companies, PCI and DSS for banks and financial institutions. All of these people are handling very sensitive information about their customers and need a monitoring and masking approach for it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also see some sort of an alignment between the evolution of security standards. So for example, zero trust is something that everyone is moving towards, and zero trust is now becoming data centric, which means you really need to look at the data and who's getting access to the data and what type of data, and dynamically understand who needs access to that data, and between those standards and regulations, right? And as you said, a lot of it is privacy. So GDPR is kind of the gold standard in the market in terms of privacy. But I see a lot of new privacy regulations coming in the United States, right? With where CCPA just became CPRA, and now there is a new law in Quebec, in Canada, that is called Law 25, that expand another privacy law in Canada called PIPEDA. So I see everywhere in the world, privacy regulations are kind of evolving and progressing, but the problem is each one has something a little bit different. So you need a little bit different controls in order to do that. And as you said, there are standards, not just regulations. For example, I have customers that needs to work with credit cards. In order for them to store any kind of credit card information, they need to comply with PCI. So even though it's not a law, it is pretty hefty in terms of fines and what you can do with credit cards if you're, violating those kind of standards. So that's a big deal. What about, the environments that DBAs and data users are getting access to, right? So there are a lot of different environments. What do you see out there?
Yeah, I mean, that is a huge area where we have customers asking for the ability to control the environment, where they can connect, what they can see, what can be viewed, edited, uh, exported is another big one. That's where our team edition software comes in, where you can set up users in different roles, different what we call projects, where
Yeah,
you control what database servers they see, and you can control the type of credentials that are used for each user,
yeah,
user base, team base. We allow for SSO authentication with all the Google Cloud platforms, two-factor authentications, for example, Okta, which is really
mhm,
popular at this point, which
yeah,
allows you to maintain your um, authentication outside of local storage inside another place that could be compromised.
right, right. And then I really see that the environment dictates the requirements for security, right? So there is kind of super strict security for production environments where only a few people can do something. They need a approved ticket in order to do any kind of a change. They should never touch any kind of data. They should just do like, agree changes in structure, but not really touch data. So that's for production data. Then you have pre-prod and test environment where it's a little bit more relaxed. You still want to understand who's doing what and how they can do it, but there is, some relaxed security environments. And then there is the whole thing about on-prem versus cloud, right? Where are you coming from? Are you touching your on-prem environment? Are you touching your cloud environment? So there's a lot of different requirements regarding that, and how to protect each one of them can be very different. But if you have one tool to do it all, that can make life a lot easier, right? That's a nice thing about that,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
right? So maybe if we are talking about, starting to talk a little bit more about functionality, maybe we should introduce a little bit our companies and our solutions, so it will be easier to understand what we both supply to customers. So let me share a slide here. And then, so let's go into SecuPi first. I'll say a few words about SecuPi. So SecuPi is a data security platform solution that enables customers to use their data responsibly, right? They are going to be compliant. They're going to have high security. They're going to have accountability, because we log everything, we enforce access controls, and we run de-identification. We have a large amount of customers. A lot of them are big, mainly in highly regulated environments and high value kind of data. So you'll see us a lot in finance, in telco, in insurance, in government. Those are the type of customers you're going to see. And another nice thing is that we are recognized by multiple analyst companies like Gartner and Kupinger and others. So that's just a little bit about SecuPi. Kyle, why don't you talk a little bit about DBeaver?
DBeaver's been around for quite a long time. It started out as an open source project, and we still maintain a huge open source community of approximately, I think, 8 million users at this point. We provide a product or product lines that go from your basic developer working locally, like our Light Edition software,
That's it.
to our enterprise software and Ultimate Edition, which are more security centric. And it, like Ultimate, allows you to do a lot more work in the cloud. Uh, Another great feature in there for your groups is in Ultimate and Team, we have some tools like Cloud Explorer, where you sign in and you get a list of every database you have access to. And then you can literally just drag and drop them into our software. So we have a breadth of software from each individual user that just works locally to large teams that need to coordinate not only their authentication, their connections to databases, script work where you're sharing scripts. Um, we are Our goal is to be that fit for any person or team that needs to access one database or multiple types of databases from on-prem and in the cloud.
That's perfect. And it's the nice thing is because we are good partners, the SecuPi solution works in all of your different editions. So this is great. I really like the fact that we have an agent for each one of them. And that means then once you have that integration, you can control everything. But even with when you go with DBeaver, that means we can already be implemented in one environment where you have a web UI. So then you don't need to install anything locally, right? There is no, it's only server-based, cloud-based in Docker containers, and that makes life a little bit easier, but it works in every one of those environments. So that's really nice.
Very nice.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about functionality. So we know why, why we need data and why everyone is addressing data. We also talked a little bit about privacy and regulations. And as I said, one of the things that we see that is aligned with regulations is the evolution of zero trust, going from more network-based zero trust into data-centric zero trust, which requires dynamic data masking and data tagging and dynamic authorization in general, or attribute-based access control, and of course, field and record level encryption. So it's not enough today to do TDE, total database encryption. You really need to understand each one of the columns and encrypt them separately, because each person needs to see different type of data, and they might not need to decrypt the entire database. So that's a big thing there. In terms of functionality, the SecuPi solution, it really has three main functionalities. The first one is what we call real-time monitoring and audit. So we would tell in one location who got access to what did they do, but we'll also include information such as classification of the data. So if you touched social security number, that's a PII. So I need to know that someone touched PII. We also going to assign a risk score for each data. So if you have a risk score, I can now say this is risky, this is less risky, this is more risky. I can also see risk over time and then say, hey, there is one point of time when one person is doing way more than they usually do. Maybe we should look at that. So it helps you understand what kind of patterns you need to look at. And of course, another important part is that in a lot of databases, you don't have all of the users in the organizations. You will see a lot of generic privileged users and generic application users and generic system accounts, but we are going to show you the original user. We're going to show you the original user. We're going to show you the user that is logged into the desktop if you're using one of the editions that are running on the desktop. And we're going to show you the real DB user in the database. So that's kind of the basic functionality. On top of that, we can decide what can you do with the database. So can you touch a schema? Can you touch a table? Can you look at a specific column? Can you see all the rows? Can you see even cells? We will be able to do that. And last but not least, we'll be able to de-identify the data. So that means we can mask data, that means we can generalize data, but it also means that we can do what is called format preserving encryption, which means I'm taking, let's say, an email address and I'm making it as look like an email address, but it's an encrypted email address. So you'll see something that looks like an email. If you're authorized, I'm able to revert it back to the original value. So that's really nice because now you can join tables based on the same value. It's not the real value, it's an encrypted value, but you can join the tables. So if as a DBA or some sort of a data user, you want to do some operation in data, but you're not allowed to see the data, you can still do the operation with that data encrypted or tokenized. So that's kind of a high level what we do there in terms of functionality. So I think I'll stop the sharing here, and then maybe ask you, Kyle, how do you see benefits, kind of business benefits of using DBeaver and SecuPi together or apart?
Well, together, I mean, it's a amazing solution to simplify security. That's one of the biggest problems you have as per se a DBA and security control is the level of monitoring and logging that you need to keep track of what users are doing. That predictive analysis to say that a user is querying PII or private information way beyond the normal amount. That's something that a lot of people are looking for that there's not a lot of solutions for.
Right.
In our software, there is, of course, query logging for every query that's ran through the centralized server. But whenever you throw on top your software with ours, I mean, it's a level of control you don't see very often without some very high-end solutions.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, one of the benefits that we see, I think in both cases, in DBeaver and in SecuPi, is reduction in cost, right? So maybe you want to take a little bit about how you can reduce costs using DBeaver, then I'll say how we do it with SecuPi.
Sure. Well, I mean, the great thing about, using DBeaver versus a lot of other tools, there's a very few tools out there that make more than one database connection. Some of our competitors have products that are a product for Postgres, a product for MySQL, a product for Oracle. And if you have more than one database, you're buying multiple products. Where with our solution, you're buying one product that is a solution for all.
That makes
So,
sense. So that does reduce a lot of the cost here. I see multiple events where we reduce cost for customers. The first one is, working with you, you have one solution to connect to everything. But also you have one solution to deploy the same kind of security to all of your databases. So imagine you have like an Oracle on-prem and you have like a Redshift in the cloud and you have a Snowflake and you have even a DB2 in the database. They all have about the same type of data. They'll have customer data, they'll have inventory data, they'll have transaction data, and the rules should be the same. So what we really need to do is understand the data, which we can get from a data catalog or from scanning on our own or from maybe a DSPM solution, so we can understand the data. And then we need to understand the users. When you do those rules are generic. I can say, DBAs that are onshore and went through a PII certification are allowed to see customer data in clear text. But if you are offshore or you didn't go through the certification and you're not a senior person, we'll see the data masked, right? If I do this type of rule, that goes to everywhere. That can work in your DB2 and your Oracle and your Redshift and your Snowflake. It doesn't matter. So it reduces a lot of the administration time. So that's one. The second thing is that it will reduce the amount of logging you're going to do, because if you're going to turn on extensive logging in every one of those databases, there's a lot of CPU that is going to take from each one of those databases. There's a lot of CPU that you need to do in order to collect it and filter it. We don't need to do that. We see everything from DBeaver, so we don't need to read the logs from the database. We know exactly what's happening, and we can prevent anyone else from logging in if they go in with a different tool or if they go in with a DBeaver that doesn't have SecuPi on it. We'll be able to see it and shut them down. So it reduces the amount of logging, which is important. And last but not least, I see everything we do in terms of encryption. That would usually take a lot of power from the databases, because encryption is an expensive CPU operation. So it reduces a lot of the overhead in terms of encryption, definitely in the cloud, because in cloud, you're paying for every CPU cycle you use. So that's a big saving we have there. And then, of course, same for DBeaver, You have one solution, one training, one maintenance, one upgrade, one everything, right? Instead of having all of those. So this is kind of the joint cost reduction benefit here. You have one solution to manage it all, and therefore it's easier to maintain and upgrade and train and all that good stuff, right? Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing to throw in there, not only on your CPU cycles, but is just storage. Storage
Right.
is expensive in the cloud, and if you have 10 different databases doing their logging, uh, that's can build up to a pretty penny quickly.
Right, right, exactly. And then even understanding the log, right? You'll need an expert to understand the Oracle log, and an expert to understand the Redshift log, and an expert to understand the DB2 log, right? We give the log the same way. It looks the same for all of those environments because you're doing very similar things in all those environments. So yeah, so there's a lot of good cost reduction there. So that's nice. So that's a little bit about the cost benefit, right? The other one, I think, is just the enablement of compliance, because every time there's a new law, you need to do something. I'll give you an example. Let's say CPRA just introduced the right to be forgotten. Same thing with Law 25. It wasn't there before. So now if a customer tells you, I don't want you to have my records anymore, you need to delete them from the database. That is an expensive operation, and it can also hurt the operations of the database and the entire system, the application, everything. We have a functionality where you can say, you know what, do a soft delete. Start with a soft delete, which means it stays in the database, but we will not show those records to anyone, not to DBAs, not to applications, not to anyone. So you're doing a soft delete, and then you give it some time, and after a while, you might be able to mask the data in the database. So we'll just put X's on it. And after a while, you can then delete it. So it gives you some operational time to deal with that new requirement for compliance. And every time there is a compliance requirement that pops up, and if you'll deal with every one of them separately, that will be very expensive and manual and long. And when you have a platform, it becomes a lot easier. So that's another nice benefit we get there. Another one that we see is reducing risk and increasing security while enabling the business. So I'll give you an example. I think it will do the same thing for DBeaver because you have the same tool working with different people from all over the world. So we have customers that are telling us, either because of compliance or because they have contracts with their customers, they need to deal with specific people with specific data. For example, you have to be a US citizen in order to see federal employee data, or you have to be onshore in order to see another sensitive data. All those things are attributes, and we look at them as attributes. So we can say, okay, we know where you are, we know what's your citizenship, so we can make a decision if you're allowed or not allowed to see a specific data. When you do that, suddenly you can offshore a lot of operation, because if you need to do your AI, you need to do your database administration. If I can say, yeah, you can do it from India, you can do it from the Philippines, you can do it from Mexico, but according to where you are, you'll see different data. And if you're in the US and you're a citizen, maybe you'll see the data in the clear. I don't know, it depends on the requirements. But if you're offshore or if you're not a citizen, you'll see masked data only, but you can still manage it. And that allows those customers to reduce the cost of their operations while still complying with either the regulation or the contracts they have with their customers. Right, makes sense? And I think I'll have some examples of that soon in the demo.
I can give you a great example there of coming from the technical support world. In two of my previous employers, we had to manually sort, especially government contracts, because if you were not a U.S. citizen, you weren't allowed to even view it.
Right.
But the system didn't have the ability to stop it. So you just had to know that, oh, this is a contract for the federal government, and only Kyle and Steve can access this.
Yeah.
That's a huge advantage.
Right. That's a big one. And then talking more about reduction in risk is since you have one DBeaver and that DBeaver can connect to 100 different systems, I can now suddenly tell you about system you never knew about, right? We have customers that are telling us, hey, we know about those 100 databases, but your system are showing us that 200 databases are being connected. So there's a lot of shadow IT, side databases, cloud databases, stuff that the organization didn't know about, it didn't manage centrally. But now, because we have central logging and central enforcement, I can say, oh, I see a new database that I never knew about, and I can start applying access controls on those. So that's another nice thing about reducing the risk there. And then, as I said before, it's really showing who's the original user, right? So if you have a DBA and you're using, I don't know how many people are actually using privileged access management for databases because it's a little bit expensive. And usually DBAs don't like to go to a jump box to get access to their databases. They like to do it with their own tool that they like and from their own desktop and from everywhere. So we can actually enable it pretty easily. So that's a nice thing. What do you say, Kai? Want to see an example? Okay. So let me share my screen again. And I'm going to work with my DBeaver. So maybe the first thing I'll show is what I just said. So let's say I'm going to go to a database where there is no user that is specifically for me. So I have this Postgres here. Actually, let's see, I don't know if it will work. I need to do this before. Let me see, let me show it. So Kyle, can you see this? You can, yeah?
Yep, I can see it.
So I have a Postgres here, and I have a user called jack@secupi.com. And you can see there is no password here. The reason there is no password is because there is no user named jack@secupi in the Postgres database. It's using native authentication, right? What I'm going to do now, I'm going to log in, open it. So, but I want to get a browser on first. So let's do this. Let's do this. So I'm going to click on this. And what would happen now is that it will take me, in this case, to Okta to do my multi-factor authentication. I don't have time, so I'll just use username and password for now. But I'm authenticating, so now I know this is Jack. Okta just said I'm Jack. And then what would happen now is that we will log you into Postgres as a DBA user, right? So what you'll see here, there you go, we're logged in. If I'm going to see who's the user is DBA1, right? So it's not Jack, it's DBA1. If I'm going to run a query, let's run a query here. So I'm going to see a table, there you go. It's DBA1 who's doing all this. DBA1 is the one who's looking at this data. But if I'll go back to my browser and I'll show you what I see inside SecuPi, let me show you that. We will see that it's Jack@SecuPi who did something. Of course, I'll tell you that the DB user is DBA1, but you will see it's Jack. There you go, it's here. So this is what I did select from. This is the select that I just did. You can see it's Jack@SecuPi. From this IP address, I can see the user that is logged into this laptop because my name is Noam. I have a username called NoamD. That's what's logged in. But you can see the DB user, DBU, is DBA1. So I know that the database thinks I'm DBA1. But SecuPi knows this is the original user. That's why I said I can tell you who's the original user, and it's not just system accounts and application accounts. And then I can see what was your query. And I can even, if I want to, usually we don't want to do it in production, but I can even give you the data, a sample data of the query. So that's pretty expensive, right? That's really nice. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you. The second thing I wanted to show you is here I have a Snowflake environment, and I'm going to run the same query as two different users. So user one is Jack, and if I'll run it as Jack to this Snowflake environment, I'm going to see data in the clear. So you see an email is in the clear, credit card is in the clear. You'll see that the department is in the clear, the birth date is in the clear, but you will see that country is only USA. There's no one that is not in the US. One more thing you'll see is that if you're an employee, I mask the data of the social security number. See, so if you're an employee, the data is masked. That's what we did with Jack, okay? So that was Jack. I'm going to run now as Jill. So if I'm going to run as Jill, same query. So same query, now I don't see everything. So the email is masked, the credit card is masked, the social security is masked. Some of it is masked with X, some of it is masked with zeros. Department is masked, the birth date is masked, but you can see that Jill can see only Canada and Mexico. She cannot see US. Now it's the same query. Select star from. There is no where statement, right? So how did we do it? That's a big question. So I'm going to go here again and see what happened. So this was Jill, and we got this from Active Directory. We imported from Active Directory two fields. One is called country assignment, and that's Canada and Mexico. That's what Jill is assigned to. And the other one is called clearance. So clearance, C2 is a low clearance, and C4 is a high clearance. Think about it as your title. If you're a VP, you can see a lot, and if you are an analyst, you can see less, right? So so think about it as what's my level of authorization within the company. And what we did here is we said because she has a low clearance, and because she is allowed to, she's assigned to Canada and Mexico, the first thing I did is a SQL rewrite. So we took this select from, and we replaced it with select from a view, and that view is where the country is in Canada and Mexico. That's the first thing we did. That's why she sees only Canada and Mexico. The second thing we did, we said, well, everything that I know about, and I'll show you how do I know about the fields, I can encrypt. So I masked. So I masked the credit card, I masked the birthday, the social security number, the email. I did another social security number with the X's, and then a department. I masked all of those. And this was the original query, right? So how did I know about that? I can either import it from a data catalog, but when I import it, I have a list of what is the data. So I had this customer CS, and then for customer CS, I know those are the fields, and I gave them clearances, and now I know who can access what. So the same thing will work on federal employees, VIP, any kind of sensitive data. That's the idea here. I can classify it, and we can also scan it. So our solution can also go into those databases, scan the database, and say, hey, this is an email, this is a social security number, and this is a first name, last name. We'll populate it here. And once we know about it, we can start masking the data, classify the data, encrypt the data. That's the idea here. Right? And of course, enforce it all in DBeaver, in any database you want. So here I just showed you Postgres and Snowflake, but it will work on any one of those 100 databases. So that's the nice thing about it.
Yeah, this is taking, I mean, as you can see in CloudBeaver and in our team edition, we have the query manager that logs all of the queries. This is just taking it to the next level.
Next level, right?
It's impressive.
With scoring, with classification, that's the idea. And of course, the access, right? So think about that. If I'm not allowing my DBAs or my offshore DBAs or my junior DBAs to see credit card information, now they can manage this table because I can assure that they will not see it, but they can manage it, right? So I take the risk away, but I can give it to more low-cost people to run my database administration. And that's the nice thing about it, right? If I want to run my analytics in offshore or with people who are more risky, I can encrypt the data for them. They will still find insights, but they will not be able to see sensitive data. Now, by the way, let me show you how easy it is to change it. So I'll just do one last thing here. So what I did here, I said that if you have the right clearance, you'll see the data in the clear. If you don't have the right clearance, you'll see the data masked. I'm going to change it now to say, see the data encrypted instead of masked. So if I'm going to do that, and I'm going to run sgil again, so I'm going to run the same query now. Run this. There you go. Now the data is encrypted. This is an encrypted email. It looks like an email, but it's encrypted. This is an encrypted credit card. This is an encrypted social security number. This is an encrypted department. And what I did here, I generalized the birth date. So the birth date, I left the year, but the month and the date went to January 1st. So I generalized the birth date. So just one click of a button, now you can see something completely different. And now I can do joins. I can join by social security number, no problem, right? Because the encryption will be the same in every other table across different databases. That's the nice thing about it, okay? So let me stop here. Okay, so let's see. We talked about the different security functionality. We talked about some business benefits. What are kind of what are the kind of processes you see DBAs, database administrators, DevOps, cloud ops teams are leveraging DBeaver and the security functionality of DBeaver in different customers?
We see a lot of, especially with our Team Edition software, where they're providing data to customer or to users via scripting that only allows them access to provided SQL queries. And along the same lines, for non-technical users, they can provide information to, per se, like a business office user or someone who's not SQL trained, to be able to gather data and use it, per se, in Excel for data analysis and so forth, and not have to understand the toils of writing a SQL statement. So that's the big thing that we say is DBA is being able to manage their databases, and development and data analysis being able to provide information to the company without providing access to the actual database itself.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's similar to something I see, which is in some customers that tell me, you know what, we allow our DBAs to do almost everything, but there are specific risky things that we don't want them to do. For example, create users. We want them to use only users that are in Active Directory. They should not create native users, or they should never drop a table in production outside of maintenance hours, right? So we can create rules to rewrite SQL queries and to say, you know what, if you're doing a create user, that's not going to happen, right? We're going to rewrite your SQL query to say print, not allowed, right? So that's one of, some of the things we can do to help customers to, better control their DBAs while still giving them whatever access they need in order to really manage it well.
That's an amazing resource that you hear quite often, is how to limit the ability of someone to do very specific tasks that most software is just not designed to handle. That's great.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, good. So I think this was a good conversation. Let's see if we have any Q&As coming from the audience. So let's see. The first question is about de-identification. How does your encryption work? are you using any third-party encryption solution built by SecuPi? And some light on the key management solution, please. Okay, so it's 3 questions. I'll answer them. So first, we are leveraging a standard-based cryptography. So format preserving encryption, we comply with the NIST standard. It's called NIST SP838G, FF1. It's a little bit long, but that's what we comply with. That's how you do format preserving encryption, and complying, we didn't invent it. We do use standard bouncy castle for encryption, so it's FIPS compliant, so that's a good thing. And in terms of key management, we use the standard key encryption key, data encryption key. The key encryption key can be stored in your own KMS or HSM. The data encryption keys are encrypted with that key encryption key, and we store them in our Java key management system inside the environment. So that's how we do our encryption. We don't use any specific third party. You don't need to buy a license, and we don't pay any kind of license for it. So that's about the encryption. Let's see. They're asking about if you can give a sample of some interesting databases that DBeaver can connect to. Have you seen anything interesting recently, Kyle?
Oh, wow. The list is really long, so it's kind of hard to pick a one that's very interesting. I mean, we connect to over 100 different databases.
Yeah.
So I could tell you the common ones we see.
Mhm.
A very interesting one that a lot of people don't connect to or know that you can connect to is like Salesforce Data Cloud. We can
Right.
connect directly to that and access it.
Makes sense.
Um, and and then all the standards. ClickHouse is another good one that most people need a very specific tool that we can handle, and Document DB.
Oh yeah, document DB. That's good. That's a NoSQL, a classic NoSQL database. Yeah, I recently see way more Mongo being happening, and Mongo and Atlas, both of it. It's all Mongo, but I see a lot of that recently. That's one. Okay, let's see if we have anything else here. Looks like that's it. Okay, so that was a pretty good conversation, very interesting conversation. If anyone wants to learn more about DBeaver, what they should do, Kyle?
You can go straight over to dbeaver.com, explore our website. There's some links to start a conversation with a chat. We also have a YouTube channel that you can search for, which has educational videos. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn. Search DBeaver and you'll find us quickly.
Perfect. Very similar to us. We do have a website, secupi.com, and we have a YouTube channel there. We also have a weekly demo that we run. So you're invited to come to a weekly demo. That will be kind of an hour-long demo. We'll give you an overview of how the solution works. And actually, every 2 months, we do a hands-on workshop. So if you watch the demo and you like to experience it yourself, you want to run it yourself, you can actually register to a workshop and try the rules yourself and de-identify stuff yourself and see the logging yourself. That's another nice thing that I see potential customers like to do. So those are good kind of topics.
Yep. And we're happy to jump in with a potential customer and provide them a live demo of our software, which we can tailor to the needs of their environment.
That's perfect. Okay, Kyle, it was a pleasure. We need to do it again.
We definitely do. This has been a lot of fun.
Sounds good. Okay, thanks a lot, Kyle. Thanks everyone who joined. Talk to you soon. Take care. See ya. Bye-bye.